bankrupt! We'll start a dark, tragic section with the slightly less dark, but still tragic story of David Dr. D. Schultz, who went so far as to smack reporter John Stossel, hard enough to bust up the reporter's eardrum, to keep kayfabe at the orders of none other than Vincent Kennedy McMahon. In spite of the orders to do so, Schultz wound up eventually getting tossed out like weak old garbage, when he became too much of a liability in the eyes of McMahon. The brutally dramatic irony here is that McMahon would later come out and admit that pro wrestling is a choreographed, manipulated form of sports entertainment, rather than wholly a sport, all to dodge athletic commissions and certain taxes. And so Schultz ultimately ends up sacrificing his own career in the WWF. Dr. D stuck to kayfabe, and rather than improving his career, it effectively destroyed it. He actually tried to spoof the whole incident over in Japan, which probably didn't help his career much if we're honest. The old doc decided to really do a face turn when he took his badass gimmick out of the ring and became a bounty hunter. At least kayfabe didn't get wrapped up in death for Dr. D, like it did on the lives and deaths of both Bruiser Brody and gorgeous Gino Hernandez. In 1986, Gino Hernandez was found dead in his apartment, and the circumstances surrounding his death were shrouded in mystery, and to this day they officially still are. But something interesting and macabre happened when fans of world-class championship wrestling called police to suggest they look into fellow wrestler Chris Adams. Gino and Chris were once known as the Dynamic Duo, a fantastic tag team, and they later turned on one another in classic tag team fashion, leading to a feud during which Hernandez kayfabe blinded Adams during a match. Because of the blinding incident, fans of WCCW believed it was possible that Adams, who in storyline vowed to kill Gino, might have actually been behind Hernandez's mysterious death. Kayfabe in those days was so believable to wrestling audiences that Adams was actually contacted by police during the investigation. Yet the awful circumstances of Hernandez's death being connected with kayfabe pales in comparison to the murder of Bruiser Brody. Brody was stabbed by Jose Huertas Gonzalez, aka Invader 1, before a show in Puerto Rico. Despite witness Tony Atlas and others being present around the time of the stabbing, Gonzalez was later acquitted on the grounds of self-defense. See, the twisted thing is that Brody was seen as a fearsome, brutal, towering brute known for smashing people to bloody bits in the ring. I mean, the guy came out in Japan half the time swinging a chain over his head. He made people run from him in fear. But this is what the defense for Gonzalez used to argue the case, stating that Gonzalez feared for his life and safety, so he stabbed Brody. Kayfabe was so strong here, it won a case in a court of law. Of course, the defense was aided by the fact that Atlas didn't get called to court during the trial. Neither did Dutch Mantel, who says he received a subpoena to appear in court after the verdict had already been handed down in Puerto Rico. Mick Foley says that wrestlers live in two worlds, existing in a space where fantasy bleeds into reality. It's almost a gothic quality to wrestling, in that the dissonance between real life and the character a performer plays is an uncanny manifestation of identity, and occasionally, as we've seen in cases like Bruiser Brody, Gorgeous Gino, and Dr. D, it can cause legitimate, violent problems that's cost people their careers, and even their lives.
I think this is fake.
You think it's fake?
What's that? Is that fake?
While no method actors in film have died, though some have argued that Heath Ledger's preparation for playing the Joker in Christopher Nolan's 2008 film The Dark Knight significantly contributed to his accidental overdose. there are more than a few who've pushed past the boundaries of safety to embody their characters. Even the previously mentioned Daniel Day-Lewis has pushed the envelope slightly too far. During the shooting of Martin Scorsese's epic Gangs of New York, Day-Lewis was so insistent on remaining in character as Bill the Butcher that he refused to wear a modern winter coat to the point he nearly died after contracting pneumonia. Then there's Nicolas Cage, whose role in 1984's Birdie as a Vietnam vet drove him to try experiencing some degree of torturous pain his character might know by having several of his teeth pulled without anesthetic. Or Billy Bob Thornton in his multi-hyphenate role for Sling Blade, stepping behind the camera to direct and then filling his shoes with crushed glass to walk oddly as his character Carl Childers. The one instance of dangerous method acting that's always fascinated and disturbed me is Christian Bale's appearance in Brad Anderson's 2004 film The Machinist. Bale went the opposite end of the spectrum from De Niro in Raging Bull, dropping 62 pounds to portray his character, a man whose guilt drives him to severe paranoia and insomnia. He lost those 60-odd pounds in only 4 months. Then after shooting of the film was over, Bale gained 70 pounds to be able to film his role as Bruce Wayne and Batman in Nolan's Batman Begins. Bale seems to be fine, though he's no stranger to weight fluctuations, evidenced by his shocking transformation into Dick Cheney for Adam McKay's 2018 film Vice. Yet I have to wonder how his body will feel in another decade or more, after the toll this must take on him physically. Gaining and losing significant amounts of weight in short periods of time is not healthy. Such is the dedication of an actor like Bale, who seeks to literally and figuratively embody his characters every time he takes on a role. Luckily, he and most actors are able to shed that character's skin, along with the pounds once the role is over. The same doesn't always go in wrestling, because the role is often never over.
Surely the era of the superhero who urge you to say your prayers and take your vitamins is definitely passé.
When we consider the days of kayfabe dying off and the dawning of a new era of pro wrestling, it's impossible not to pay attention to the life and legacy of Brian Pillman, and the indelible mark he left upon the squared circle. Kayfabe fused to Pillman during his attempts to play WCW and WWF against one another, as it became entwined with not only the character he played on TV, but also with his real identity, considering his personal income was wrapped up in the entire angle. He basically used kayfabe as a way to leverage his personality in negotiations between himself and the companies, pushing the expected boundaries of reality and fiction to make himself appear crazy, hence his nickname, the Loose Cannon. Something Pillman used brilliantly was subtext, playing off the industry itself, and this takes us back to Stanislavski. For the method technique, subtext is what gives everything meaning, and it's what engages an audience who want to be involved in the causes of the character's behavior, emotions, and thoughts. Subtext makes the audience complicit in the behavior of the actor displaying subtext, and then the spectator and the character share a secret. Pillman most famously used subtext on 2 significant occasions. First, he referred to Kevin Sullivan after a match in WCW as Booker Man, which for those who didn't know, was the head writer in a wrestling company. For those who did know the term, it made Pillman seem crazy for daring to reveal such things on national TV. And this drew fans in, because those who knew the term were starting to see the loose cannon character emerge. And those who didn't know the term then wanted to know and learn more. Second, when Pillman wound up in ECW with Paul Heyman, he did several skits, one of which involved him literally wrestling a giant pencil. Again, this was using inside industry terms. pencil once more referred to the booker or the promoter, whoever's holding the figurative pencil and making the matches. This was a bit more subtle and entertaining than his jab at Sullivan. Each of these incidents used that subtext, and while some within the industry might have actually thought Pillman was insane, Pillman was using that subtext in order to make his character feel deeply real, even in an industry that was moving away from kayfabe ever so slightly. Pillman was drawing the audience in and making wrestling fans feel like they were a bigger part of the whole experience.
I respect you, Booker man.
Sadly, a car accident in April of 1996 severely altered Pillman physically, and after that he would never be able to do what he once did in the ring in terms of high-flying maneuvers, forcing him to further rely on the loose cannon persona. The accident itself was called into question due to Pillman's work-to-shoot antics, and the legitimate perception that he was out of control, capable of doing anything to push an angle. Some rumors at the time actually suggested that Pillman was getting plastic surgery to look like Shawn Michaels, and that he planned to go into the WWF as Michaels' evil twin brother. Kayfabe surrounding Pillman was so prominent that even his involvement in a life-threatening accident wasn't initially believed by many, including fellow wrestlers. Pillman's insistence on sticking with the loose cannon character, but being physically incapable of performing like he did prior to his car accident, later led to the further deterioration of his body, not to mention his psychological well-being. He kept to the character in terms of Stanislavski's system through adaptation, in the overcoming of physical obstacles that would constantly need adjustments in order for the actor to achieve a goal. However, he did so to his detriment, because he needed to remain medicated to keep performing, even at a diminished level compared to the level at which he once performed. Pillman's sister Linda says that at one point Brian was at home hooked to an IV bag, and he'd unhook to go perform, then hook himself back up when he got home again. Pillman's eventual instability in real life went largely undealt with properly because of the inability to tell his character from his real identity. Although Pillman's death was ruled as due to a heart attack, brought on by a condition that had previously killed his father, there's little doubt that his hard-living lifestyle, between taking prescribed pain medication from his doctors to the steroids he was occasionally taking, contributed to a weakened heart at the age of only 35. If kayfabe hadn't become such an intricate part of Pillman's life, and his character hadn't melted into his everyday life, it's possible that he might have received more help when he clearly needed it. Not to say he wouldn't have gone the same route as many other wrestlers who pushed their bodies past their limits while taking medication to achieve the goal. All the same, the inability to distinguish between Brian Pillman and the loose cannon created a series of conditions under which his health was significantly adversely affected. That's not solely on him either. It's also on his fellow performers, the whole industry, promoters, and, to a degree, us, the audience.
It's still real to me, damn it!